Well, if the fact that it appears to glamorize the villainy of it, that happens to be the accident of the film and its true nature. I have to believe, for whatever reasons, that these people were able to rationalize that what they were doing.
When people talk about the most fascinating and sometimes most ruthless stars of Hollywood's golden age, one name always stands out: Burt Lancaster. A fearless rebel, he shocked the industry when he unveiled what he chillingly called his survivor's list, an unflinching exposé naming those he believed were Hollywood's most evil. Who made the list, and what did Burt say about them? Join us as we reveal 14 of the Golden Age's darkest names that Burt revealed. Number 14. Kirk Douglas. The very first name Burt Lancaster revealed was Kirk Douglas. They were frequent collaborators, starring together in classics like Gunfight at the OK Corral and 7 Days in May.
This is General Hardesty's writing. I know it pretty well. That paper came from the Joint Chiefs meeting room.
On screen, they were allies, but in Lancaster's private writings, the truth was more venomous. He described Douglas as a man carved from ambition and coated in ice. While the world admired Kirk Douglas as the fearless hero of Spartacus, Burt Lancaster saw something darker behind the Hollywood legend. To him, Kirk was no noble champion, but a master manipulator, a man willing to sacrifice even his closest friends if it meant grabbing the next headline. Lancaster accused him of ruthless blacklisting, of snatching roles from under fellow actors, and of turning his famous charm into a dangerous weapon to undermine rivals.
You'll get your ears shot off if you go outside. You want to be heroes, you get plenty of chances. There'll probably be Jeffs in your lap before night.
In one of his sharpest remarks, he even suggested Kirk would steal a role from his own son just to stay in the spotlight. But Lancaster didn't reserve his sharp words for towering titans alone. After dismantling Kirk's larger-than-life image, he turned his pen towards someone very different: Hollywood's eternal boy next door. Number 13. Mickey Rooney. America once adored Mickey Rooney as the cheerful boy next door, bursting with charm and energy. Yet Lancaster painted a harsher picture, describing him as a firecracker with a short fuse, who often turned that energy into cruelty.
Don't you want to see? No, you either. Get out of here!
Behind the grin, he mocked extras, sabotaged fellow actors, and seemed to take joy in humiliating others. His personal life only deepened the chaos. Rooney married 8 times. In Lancaster's exposé, he wrote that Mickey's string of failed marriages was less about bad luck in love and more a pattern of control and abandonment. Mickey also struggled with alcohol and pills and gambled recklessly, once losing $50,000 in a single night. Twice bankrupt, he spent decades chasing money that slipped away. By the time he died in 2014, he was living modestly, burdened with debts, and reportedly left behind only $18,000, a tragic fall from Hollywood's golden pedestal. And Mickey was not the only Hollywood icon whose darker truths clashed with his public image. The next name on the list will leave you shocked.
We got an accident back here! What happened? I don't know! Wait a minute! I'll find out! What happened? Wait a minute!
Number 12. Spencer Tracy. Spencer Tracy was praised as one of Hollywood's greatest actors, the picture of deep, brooding talent. Audiences loved him for the raw emotion and quiet power he brought to the screen.
But you do know, I'm sure you know, what you're up against.
But Burt Lancaster claimed this was just a mask. Behind the scenes, he painted Tracy as fiery and cruel, with drinking habits that turned him into a nightmare. Lancaster accused him of drunken outbursts that frightened crews and left fellow actors shaken. He could play angels on the screen, but in the dressing room, he was a devil, Lancaster allegedly wrote. Hollywood often brushed it off, calling him a troubled genius. But Lancaster said all he saw was chaos, hurt feelings, crushed spirits, and a trail of fear wherever Tracy worked. And women weren't excluded from his list either. Lancaster claimed some of Hollywood's most celebrated actresses carried shadows of their own. Number 11. Natalie Wood. To millions, Natalie Wood was the fragile ingenue, a starlet defined by innocence and tragedy. Lancaster, however, painted a strikingly different portrait. He claimed Natalie was a master manipulator, able to weaponize her vulnerability to bend powerful men to her will. She could cry on cue in a boardroom or a bedroom, he wrote, suggesting that her tears weren't always real.
Well, I must say you certainly seem to thrive on it.
Well, I was brought up on it.
According to him, Natalie thrived on emotional warfare, pitting co-stars and directors against each other to secure the upper hand. Her untimely and mysterious death only added to the shadow he cast over her legacy. That pattern of masks and swift manipulation carried into his next subject. Number 10. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor was the Diamond Queen of drama. She dazzled the world with her violet eyes and legendary beauty, but in Lancaster's memoir, she was a storm wrapped in silk. He alleged she wielded her allure like a weapon, capable of bringing entire sets to chaos. She didn't just steal scenes, she stole souls, he wrote. According to him, Elizabeth's tantrums and demands often left directors hostage to her whims. Her turbulent personal life bled into her work, creating disruption wherever she went. Her chaos-filled aura left sets in disarray, but if Elizabeth was a storm, Lancaster argued that James Stewart was something far more chilling, a hidden darkness behind a saintly mask. Number 9. James Stewart. Undeniably, Burt Lancaster's most surprising inclusion on his list was James Stewart, the actor long admired for his roles in It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. To the public, James symbolized honesty and kindness. But Lancaster painted a very different picture. He suggested that James's warmth was only a mask hiding a colder side. Behind the famous smile, Lancaster believed, was a man who judged and looked down on others. He also hinted that James's celebrated patriotism and moral character
of the craft,
were not genuine virtues, but clever tools he used to strengthen his image and gain influence in Hollywood's powerful circles. The idea that America's most beloved everyman could possess a hidden, dark heart shocked many, making Lancaster's claim one of the most scandalous on his list. To him, James's reputation was carefully built on charm, while his true nature remained far less admirable. This revelation set the tone for the rest of his list, each name pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's brightest icons. And next came one of the most untouchable figures of all. Number 8. Marilyn Monroe. To millions, Marilyn Monroe embodied vulnerability, a tragic goddess of beauty whose troubled life only deepened her allure. However, she was the angel of addiction, and Lancaster's pen cut through the myth with brutal words. He described Monroe as a black hole of need, whose addictions and insecurities drained those around her. He argued that her fragility was most times far from innocent. She allegedly weaponized it to halt productions, seduce power brokers, and manipulate sympathy to bend Hollywood to her will. He wrote that she often made herself helpless so others would be forced to carry her. The world saw her as a victim. Lancaster, however, saw her as a destructive force. Yet she was only one name on his long list of Hollywood idols stripped of their shine. Number 7. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn had long been celebrated as Hollywood's swashbuckling rogue, the dashing pirate who swung across screens with a reckless grin. Audiences saw him as the embodiment of charm, adored by women, admired by men, and envied for a lifestyle that seemed as thrilling off-screen as it was on film. His reputation for wild adventures and endless parties became the stuff of legend woven into Hollywood's golden era mythology. Yet Burt Lancaster described Errol very differently. In his writings, he suggested that those colorful stories were not harmless mischief at all, but instead a carefully hidden darkness. He portrayed Errol as a man who lived without regard for anyone else, because, as Lancaster put it, other people simply didn't matter to him. Beneath the laughter and bravado, he claimed, lurked violent tempers, predatory impulses, and a chilling disregard for consequences. According to Lancaster, the parties so often romanticized were not carefree gatherings, but events that blurred into scandals. When those scandals threatened exposure, they were quietly buried with hush money, leaving behind a trail of silenced victims. While the public chuckled at Errol's rakish image, Lancaster saw only evidence of deliberate cruelty and manipulation hidden behind the charm. That same theme of charm masking something darker carried over to the next person on Lancaster's list. Number 6. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby's smooth voice had enchanted millions, making him one of the most admired singers of his time. Yet Lancaster painted a darker picture, saying the warmth people heard in his music hid something entirely different. He remarked that the famous voice belonged to a man of ice, insisting that Bing was cold, distant, and controlling once away from the spotlight. According to him, Bing's charm faded at home, where his children allegedly endured strict and sometimes abusive discipline. Lancaster suggested that the man who could soothe the world with lullabies was also capable of lashing out behind closed doors. These accusations seemed less shocking years later, when some of Bing's own children revealed painful memories of growing up under such rigid control. On film sets, Lancaster said Bing's aloofness pushed people away, while at home, it left lasting scars. Now, let's move on to the next on the list. Number 5. Henry Fonda. Lancaster spoke of Henry Fonda in a way that contrasted sharply with the image the public adored. On screen, Fonda had always appeared as the symbol of morality and calm justice, the steady man in The Grapes of Wrath and 12 Angry Men, whose quiet decency defined his reputation. Yet Lancaster claimed this was more of a performance than reality. He said Henry carried an emotional coldness that often slipped into cruelty, describing him as someone who lived life like it was a courtroom. According to Lancaster, he judged others with a simple look, leaving those around him feeling small and frozen in his shadow. Even his family was not spared, as Lancaster believed they bore the harshness of his aloofness. Jane Fonda herself would later admit that her father was loving but distant, showing little warmth even to those closest to him. Lancaster insisted this was not shyness or a quiet temperament, but rather an intentional withholding, almost as if Henry took control by denying affection. To him, every relationship felt like a trial, with Henry standing firmly as the judge who decided the value of those around him. This image revealed a man far removed from his noble screen roles. Interestingly, Lancaster's pen did not spare Henry Fonda's daughter. Number 4. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda was one of the most visible political figures of her generation. To the world, Jane was courageous, outspoken, and a fighter for change. But Lancaster's words painted her in darker shades. He saw Jane as a figure who wielded activism like a weapon, both a shield to protect herself and a sword to silence dissent. Warm one moment and ice-cold the next, she could, in his view, sacrifice relationships, reputations, and even truths in service of her causes. Lancaster claimed that her beliefs went beyond simple convictions. To him, they worked more like instruments of control. He described her as deliberate and strategic, someone unafraid to cut ties if it helped push her agenda forward. While her supporters admired her courage, Lancaster, with a sharper tone, painted her instead as relentless and ruthless. If Henry Fonda's silence was a weapon of distance, Gary Crosby's story showed the opposite: noise born from wounds. Number 3. Gary Crosby. Lancaster suggested that the mistakes of Bing Crosby had passed down to his oldest son, Gary. As a child, Gary grew up facing his father's cruelty, and he seemed to carry not only the pain, but also the anger it caused. Lancaster did not see him as evil by nature, but as someone shaped by deep hurt. As an adult, Gary reportedly turned that pain into struggles with drinking, bitterness, and unkindness toward others. Lancaster believed this was not just his own doing, but part of what he inherited from his father. He became a symbol of how pain in Hollywood did not end with its famous stars. Instead, it spread to their children, creating new cycles of sadness and harm. For Lancaster, Gary's life showed how one family's darkness could echo across generations, leaving scars that were hard to escape. Gary's story closed one chapter of Hollywood's inherited pain, but Lancaster didn't stop there. He turned his gaze to another star, whose iron will and ruthless drive left a different kind of shadow. Number 2. Joan Crawford. If there was ever a Hollywood name synonymous with ambition and severity, it was Joan Crawford, and Lancaster, unsurprisingly, included her on his list. He described Joan as a woman of iron ambition and steel nerves, capable of commanding an entire set with a single glare. Behind the elegance and glamour was, he claimed, a ruthless disciplinarian who terrorized young actresses, berated assistants, and manipulated public opinion with the precision of a general plotting war. Lancaster wrote that she ruled with her eyebrows and her fists, echoing the allegations her daughter Christina would later immortalize in Mommy Dearest. For Lancaster, Joan was not just a star, she was a monarch who ruled Hollywood's kingdom of shadows with an iron hand. Number 1. Lucille Ball. She is remembered by many as one of the most loved stars in Hollywood. People admired her bright laugh, her sharp sense of timing, and the way she changed television forever with I Love Lucy. But Lancaster's supposed memoir painted a very different picture. He suggested that Lucy's talent was only part of her drive. What she truly wanted, he believed, was control. He said she didn't stop at being funny. She wanted ownership and power. As the head of Desilu Productions, she stood as one of the strongest women in the industry. Lancaster claimed she closely controlled her workers, made secret deals, and ruled her company with the toughness of a general. That same laugh, which audiences thought of as warm and joyful, could, according to him, become sharp and cutting whenever things failed to go her way. In his view, she was not only a comic genius, but also a hard ruler, showing that even laughter could cover hidden cruelty. Now, the question that lingers is, did Burt Lancaster truly list all the names he had in mind? The unfinished list of Hollywood's final villains. Lancaster's memoir trailed off before naming a final villain. Some believed he meant to accuse another towering legend, perhaps Humphrey Bogart, rumored to be harsh, and others speculated that he had one last betrayal to reveal, too dangerous to commit to paper. What Lancaster's list revealed was less about gossip and more about survival. He believed Hollywood had built its empire not just on art, but on suffering, the pain of co-stars, the submission of crew members, and the silence of victims too powerless to resist. Was it bitterness from a man who had seen too much of the industry's underbelly? Or was it a genuine record of truths too dangerous to reveal? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.